Good morning. I'm Dan Noone. I'm the CEO of G2 Goldfields. We're listed on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol GTWO and the OTCQX under the symbol GUYGF. We're an exploration company which has a high-grade discovery in Guyana. To date, it has a combined 1.2 million ounces at about 9 grams a tonne from an initial resource in April last year. We've been drilling since then. We've made a new discovery in the Ghanie area, to the south of the OKO Main Zone. We're also exploring aggressively along the 17-kilometre trend between the OKO Main Zone and the Aremu district.
Dan, thank you very much for the introduction. Good to hear that summary again. Could you just remind me of the resource at the OKO Main Zone? 1.2 million ounces at
9 grams a tonne.
Okay, so you've really focused on the high grade there. I noticed since we last spoke, your neighbours to the south, Reunion Gold, have put out a maiden resource, and it's about 4 million ounces at just under 2 grams a tonne. So they've obviously kind of drilled out a bulk tonnage resource there. Excuse me. And you're drilling Ghanie down to the south of the OK Main Zone, down towards the border with Reunion. Have you moved away from that high grade OKO Main Zone? Are you targeting a kind of a bulk tonnage resource down in the south there?
Not so much. Basically, at the Ghanie Main Zone, we have a footwall zone which is high grade. And over the main zone to date, it averages about 6 metres wide and 12 grams a tonne. So that's what we're focusing on drilling. Within the hanging wall there, we have on average about 25 metres going about 1 gram per tonne. Now, that's a good thing. It means you can open pit that. It means, your cost of mining the high grade comes down. But our focus is still high grade. We're firm believers that in Greenfields districts, the key to any startup is high grade and rapid payback, and where you can keep your capex low. We built a mine in Guyana before at Aurora, and certainly that's how we focused on our second feasibility there, building something we could build and focusing on high grade and payback.
When you talk about starting small and then growing up, I know that we're not at a development decision yet here, but let's just talk in kind of hypotheticals. When you think about starting small and then kind of phasing up, do you see the need to have a kind of a critical mass with that first step? I mean, does it have to be a certain size before you kind of will commit capital to it?
Oh, absolutely. And I think anything would need, you'd have to be north of 1 million ounces, which we already are. You would be north of 8 grams a tonne, which we have. Certainly we've been expanding out at the OKO Main Zone, and now with Ghanie, for sure, I think you'd be able to push past 150,000 ounces a year, which I think is probably in a greenfield situation, a minimal. At that grade, it'd make a lot of money. And so we see that as something we'd like to keep expanding upon. Like say we have the OKO Main, which we probably do 120. At Ghanie Central, you can probably push between 50 and 80. And then as we keep finding more high-grade things along trend, you start to build a bigger initial plant. But I think in reality, you want to keep that capex as low as possible and potentially beneath $150 million, I think, and pay it back within a year. I think that's extremely attractive to any miner.
And those are quite punchy numbers. I mean, obviously these are just targets. This is a wish list of what you're looking for at the moment, rather than, I mean, we don't want to get in trouble with an exchange. You haven't defined this by any stretch of the imagination. This is what you would like to have. This is a nice to have.
Exactly, and we see with the grade that we have at the OKO Main Zone, we put a whittle pit over that, just a rough one with no benches, whatever else. We think we're in that range of around 100,000 ounces a year that you could get out of that. And so hence you carry on. I mean, you always have to do the back of the envelope when you're exploring, because if you're not exploring for something that can be mined, well, what are you doing, right? So we always do that on all our projects, and certainly here we think we've got to the stage where, yes, this can be a mine, it can be a high-grade mine, keep going. And as we keep having more success, obviously, that gives us more certainty.
When you're talking about kind of bringing when you talk about 100,000 ounces per annum, it's the size of your plant depends very much on the grade of your ore. If you're putting 1 gram material through, you need to have a plant that can take 10 times more material than if you're putting 10 grams tonne through.
Exactly. That's why we like keeping exploring for the high grade. Because, I mean, that initial capex really is determined by the size of the plant you're putting in, except determines the size of the road you're going to build. There's a whole number of flow-through effects that happen when you start building bigger plants. So, we'd like to keep the initial concept of having a high-grade, smaller plant originally, which you then expand as you keep building more resources. Also with the knowledge that one day, all these deposits go underground. These greenstone-hosted deposits, they'll keep going down for at least a kilometre and probably further. So you have to understand what is the end game as far as how much you can mine underground per annum will decide the size of your plants. And you stockpile low-grade stuff to start with and put high-grade through. You can always put the low-grade through.
Okay, well, I'll come back to the concept of going deeper on a granite greenstone deposit. But before we do that, you put out some news. I think it was in late May. With the latest drilling from the Ghanie zone, you had, I think, 27 meters at 6.5 grams gold, and you had 10 meters in another hole at around 10 grams a ton gold. But when I looked through the full table of the Excel spreadsheet, there were quite a lot of kind of lower grade intercepts. There was kind of 1 gram material, 1.5, 0.8, 2 grams. Is this the distinction between the hanging wall and the footwall that I need to kind of get when I look through that list of tables? Is that what I'm seeing, the split between?
Yeah, to a degree. So basically, along the Ghanie zone, which we've drilled over 1.2 kilometres now, there's 4 distinct zones which have that higher grade footwall area, but also the hanging wall, the low grade into the hanging wall, and they're located where we get basically flexures on our F2 folding. So as you come through the hinges of those folds, you get more fracturing and it blows out. So basically more fluid flow. So even though that shear runs at 1.2 kilometres and you always hit it, it's always got gold in it. To date, we have 4 zones along there, which are shaping up as areas that could be mined and certainly have resources. So those outcrop at surface and they appear to be plunging gently to the northeast. And that's what we're chasing at the moment with our drilling at Ghanie.
You talk about these hinge zones within the shear, these a plunging chute within the down the dip of the plane. Obviously, you've only been exploring here a relatively short period of time. It's only a few years that you've been exploring, and this sounds as if it's a kind of a crucial element is understanding the structure. So the more that you can understand the structure of this area, the better you'll be able to target your exploration. I mean, do you agree with that statement in general?
Absolutely. And to that end, you just had Brett Davis out on site, who's a renowned structural geologist, and he helped us close a few of the holes we had in our model. The guys have been doing a great job and we've been hitting good mineralisation. What we found with our chronology and certainly with the definition of a shear 3 or a third phase of shearing after the second phase is that we have a late development of gold at the end of the third deformation, which is generally straight along that third phase of shearing, straight north-south. The controls of that high-grade mineralisation is at the intersection of the lineations of the second shearing phase and the third shearing phase, which does have a northeast plunge, but shallower than what we thought. So originally we thought the northeast plunge was controlled by folds of the third phase of folding, and it was a bit steeper. It's actually shallower now. And then we have another phase, lineation, plunging gently to the southeast. And so they are the 2 controls on the exceptionally high-grade mineralisation that we find at the OKO Main Zone, and now we're targeting at Ghanie as well. So basically we have these flat, shallow dipping plunges to the northeast. We have 2 distinct zones where we get plus an ounce material. Then in between that we have zones plunging gently to the southeast. And in between that whole zone we have areas where you get 2 to 8 grams, but you don't get the spectacular grade. So that's what we're chasing now. And that's been great work by Brett to help us do that.
Sorry, I'm quite comfortable with many of these terms, but even I'm getting a bit confused. So you've got, do you say in the Ghanie zone or in the OKO Main Zone, you've got these 2 kind of 2 dipping shoots to the northeast?
In the OKO Main, we have that long zone which is plunging to the northeast, but within that we have 2 distinct domains of exceptional high grade, which plunged probably more shallow than the general trend, and that's and 2 of those, and then we have 1 fat zone gently plunging to the southeast. And as we go down, we'll see if we can find more of those southeast plunging zones, but we'll also trace those high-grade domains down to the northeast as we go deeper. It's expensive drilling. We like to hit the higher grade stuff. So, and we think we're definitely on that. We can map those or log those mineral lineations in the core. That was one of the things that Brett helped us do. And so we can map from hole to hole where those lineations are going and follow that trend. And so that's quite exciting. It's what we're doing at the OKO Main Zone at the moment. We're still doing proof of concept within the original body that we had, where we still have some big gaps up to 80 metres. We're plugging a few holes in where we believe that high-grade domain should be, and then we're going to follow that down to the northeast as we go deeper. So that's a real focus at the OKO Main Zone and at Ghanie as well.
And is that domain purely structural? So is it a is there a kind of any geological control on that, or is it within the is it a kind of a purely the intersection between 2 of these shears, the shear 2 and the shear 3, that are actually controlling your domain, or do you have to keep an eye on the underlying geology to see that it's more favourable when you're in a certain type of geology, that the intersection gives you a better fracture pattern and therefore fluid pathway and depositional environment?
Absolutely, Mel. So once again, we still have in the OKO Main Zone within the ductile carbonaceous sediments where we have the Port Spain development, which was early, and then that's been fractured by the later deformations. And when we're in that zone, along that north-south trend of the OKO Main Zone, that's where we get the high grades. When we come out of that around the fold to the north, and we cut across the andesites and sediments, we get the shearing but very low grade. And we're tracing those north-south shears because we know that that's the gold's late, so it's definitely running on those third phase of shearing. Tracing that to the north along shear 3, and when we come back across either the magnetite-rich metamorphics or the carbonaceous sediments, we believe will once again be in the right domain to get the high grade. So we'll trace it up to the birdcage, and then that trends off to OKO Northwest to the northwest, which we're exploring heavily at the moment. Also down obviously in the Ghanie Main Zone, when you come through the magnetite-rich unit, yes, you get that high grade of dissemination as well. And when you go into the andesites and sediments, it's not good. The shear's there, but the mineralisation is quite low.
It's funny, but perhaps we shouldn't have 2 geologists speaking to each other, because really what I was trying to do in this interview was to try and get an understanding for the strategy of your exploration. But what it seems, just in terms of kind of simplifying it, it seems that your geologists on the ground now, with the visit from Brett Davis and the ongoing data that you've gathered from the rocks, it's almost as if you're building the key to the area to understand that you've got to recognize that certain conjunction of structure with geology in order to get your high grade gold domain, and then to use that as your exploration tool.
Exactly. And to that end, at the end of Brett's trip, we went for a drive along the whole district, up through OKO Northwest, up to the Aremu area, and we saw the same patterns occurring again and again. So he stated it's a camp. It's definitely we're seeing the same patterns. With our geophysics, with the ground mag and the VLF, which pick out the magnetic metavolcanics and also the carbonaceous sediments, we now believe we can quickly determine where our good hosts are. We know which obviously the directions of the shearing which brings the gold is. So to that end, we're aggressively exploring out at OKO Northwest at the moment, where there's a number of new mines, artisanal mines operating out there. And also we revisited Aremu, where we have a better understanding now of what's up there. So basically we think, and we are actively exploring aggressively on that trend. So there's 3 things we're doing at the moment. One is obviously targeting high grade at the OKO Main Zone and extending it to depth with the iron updated resource at the end of September. Obviously at Ghanie, we're still trying to exactly figure out where those high grade zones are and where they're going, and we'll keep exploring that. That's not as advanced as OKO Main Zone, but I'd say nearly a third of our efforts at the moment definitely on exploring the trend north of the OKO Main Zone all the way up to the Aremu district, because now, like I say, we think we have a blueprint of how we can go about finding more of these high-grade bodies, because this really is a greenfields district.
And are you splitting those three the tripartite effort into one rig on each, or how many rigs have you got on site at the moment?
We've got 3 rigs running at the moment, and we'll probably get a 4th. There'll be 2 at the OKO Main Zone, because we have to basically build up the resource there. 1 at Ghanie and 1 hitting exploration targets. So that'll be intermittent. That will not be running all the time. As we generate drill targets, we'll drill them. Yes, we tend to find that's the best way of doing it. And we will. And we've got a lot of areas out to the northwest where we want to go and drill, but basically we're trenching at the moment and doing geophysics. We'd like to specifically know exactly where we want to drill, because these things can hide on you really well.
And sorry, they can hide on you, as in they don't. It's hard to spot them at the surface.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes they're covered in sand. Sometimes they're just folded away in the outcrop. You see the siltstones and the sandstones. So, but when we see those shears in geophysics, we can see the iron-rich unit, or we can see the carbonaceous sediments lining up in the right geometries. We can trace that the trend to the right areas.
And it reminds me, is that basically ground mag that you can do? You can walk with a magnetometer and pick up the structure.
Yeah, so we do. We do ground magnetometry and we do ground VLF. And the ground mag's good because if you get a good anomalous area where it's tightly folded, you can go back and do a grid rather than just one set of lines. So you really trace out those fold hinges, and which is where we believe are some of the crucial points for gold deposition.
And you've got the equipment, so you don't have to hire it in or out. You've got your own kit.
Yeah, we've got our own kit. We have our QA/QC done off site by Gully in Newfoundland, and then we have our geophysicist down in Florida who does the interpretation. So it's all remote, but it flows fairly well.
Yeah, good. And you mentioned a resource in September. Is that a definite target? Are you just working on OKO Main Zone, or might you be able to, with the wind in the right direction, get a maiden resource on Ghanie as well?
We want a maiden resource on Ghanie as well. So, there's we've been a bit distracted in the first half of this year with the Ghanie discovery and hitting all the targets around. So we really need to get focused on drilling OKO Main Zone to depth, but also drilling the 4 zones at the Ghanie zone and figuring out exactly where they're going. And so we'd like to see that at the end of September. We've put ourselves under the pump on that one, but sometime around then for sure.
And therefore there'll be a data cutoff quite soon, I should imagine, in the next kind of probably sometime in July there'll be a data cutoff.
Did we get? Yeah, we'd probably like to think mid-August. We'll see. Like I say, we've got to get going here rather quickly. We got distracted with the discovery at Ghanie and then all the other targets around there. But we know we have to get back at OKO Main Zone. But after the work with Brett, we've actually got a clearer idea of where we're going to target down plunge, and also within the historic resource there. So, and as we actually drill the higher grade, we tend to get higher grade. So our graphs are performing very well as standard normal curves. So actually our top cuts are rising as well the more we drill into those high grade zones. So we'd like to think that we can raise the average grade of the deposit, and we'd like to think we have exceptionally high grade domains, at least 2 and possibly 3, which do lead to the economics moving forward.
Could you just explain, perhaps for someone who's non-technical, as you build your database, what it means about the top cut rising and what that does to your overall resource?
Well, basically, as you get more confidence statistically in your database, the second standard deviation comes in tighter, right? So basically, or it goes further out actually. So basically, the top cut, where you cut your high grade, so you've got a 90 gram a tonne sample, you're not cutting it down to 50 grams in your resource space. You may stay up at 75 or 80. So that raises the average grade of your mineralisation, and when you put that into your resource, the average grade's higher, so you actually get more ounces as well. So yeah, just more drilling. I mean, we drilled wide space at OKO Main Zone originally. We were doing 80 metre step outs. So, and it was a question from some people as well, how do you know it's continuous? So as we infill and get those good high grades, it gives confidence, 1, geologically, and 2, statistically.
Yeah, reading that back to you, when you start off in your drilling, when you get a very high grade, it can look like a statistical outlier, and therefore it can't be included into your kind of average calculations. So you have to kind of cut it from a 90 to 95, right down to whatever the deemed top level of your top cut of your average data set might be, which might be 50 grams per ton. But as you get more higher grades, it starts to become a kind of a statistically integral part of your data set, and so you can perhaps get away with cutting it to 75 grams. But let's you and I get away from geostatistics, because we'll lose ourselves along with everybody else. So in terms of news flow between let's say kind of early Q4, late Q3, end of September, early October, this is when you're aiming for your resource to come through. Is it drill, just drill results until then? Anything else on the horizon?
That's pretty much it. So it's drill at OKO Main and Ghanie. Hopefully a discovery along the trend out to the northwest. We're certainly being aggressive with that. So but definitely drill results consistently. Hopefully a new discovery, or possibly two. We're always looking at adding land down there in a district or nearby. That may or may not happen. We don't know. We're always talking to people down there. But as of yet, it's really just drill, and hopefully another couple of discoveries along trend.
And where are you in terms of cash?
I've got $15 million in the bank. With 2 rigs, we'll burn about 600 a month. The third rig will go to about 800. If we get the fourth rig intermittently, let's call it $1 million a month. We may get to at the top end.
Okay, so plenty of time in the world of junior mining. You've got plenty of runway. Good. Great. Well, the share price is kind of gradually responding. It's steady as she goes to a degree. I mean, there is an upward trend, which is positive. It doesn't feel particularly exciting out there. I mean, if you go to any of the conferences, it still seems as if the interest is not in gold. It's in critical minerals and in battery metals. Do you just shrug and carry on, or what's your philosophy?
To a degree. I mean, I think we've got something which is going to be economic in any market. We would like to have a better market for sure. Our cost of capital would go down, but we still have to basically continue to shepherd the project forward, keep discovering more high grade, keep advancing at the market. We can't control, but we can control what we do, and so we know what we need to do between now and the next 12 months, and we just keep building resource. I think eventually the market will turn in our direction, but we can't control that.
Have you got a kind of an internal figure of your cost of discovery or cost per ounce discovered?
Originally on the first 1.2 million ounces, it was $5 an ounce. Obviously, as we go through the second phase with deeper drilling, it'll be more than that. I think it'll still be less than $10. With the new Ghanie discovery, that will help a lot. So that's the range.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Dan, thank you so much. I look forward to the next update.
Thanks, Melvin. Good talking to you.